What happens when a gentle man decides to transform bare earth into a living paradise? When empty soil becomes the canvas for dreams? Today we witness how Ly Tu Huyen and little Maya turn a small plot of land into something extraordinary. A garden that blooms with more than just plants. Stay with us. Day stood at the edge of the small plot of land, his weathered hands resting on his hips, as morning light painted the empty soil golden. This wasn't much, just a modest piece of earth on the mountainside. But in his mind's eye, he could already see it transformed. He could picture dragon fruit vines climbing their trellises, pomelo trees heavy with fruit, and rows of vegetables swaying in the highland breeze. When Huyen joined him, carrying Maya on her hip, Day's face lit up with quiet excitement. "What do you see when you look at this land?" he asked softly. Huyen studied the bare ground, then smiled. "I see possibility," she answered. "I see home." That single word, home, meant everything to them. For Huyen, who had been driven from her mother-in-law's house with nothing but her daughter and broken dreams, the concept of home had become almost mythical. For De, who had watched his ex-wife Thuy walk away in search of wealthier pastures, home represented something he thought he'd lost forever. Now, standing together on this small plot, they weren't just planning a garden, they were planning their future. Maya wriggled down from her mother's arms and ran to the center of the plot, her small feet kicking up dust. "Can I have my own garden too?" she called out, her voice bright with hope. Day knelt beside her, his gentle manner putting the child at ease. "Of course, little one. Right here, near the house where you can see your plants every morning." The planning became a family affair. Dee explained his vision for the perimeter, dragon fruit along the back fence, their exotic flowers eventually blooming under moonlight. Pomelo trees would anchor the corners, their broad leaves providing shade. Between them, he'd plant guava, papaya, and starfruit. Each tree was chosen with purpose, not just for harvest, but for beauty and sustainability. Huyen's eyes sparkled as she described her section. Neat rows of vegetables that would feed them through the seasons. Morning glory, mustard greens, herbs, and the vegetables that grew well in this highland climate. But she wanted more than practicality. "I want flowers too," she said almost shyly. Marigolds between the vegetables, cosmos along the paths, maybe some zinnias. Something beautiful to look at while we work. Dee reached for her hand. "This garden should have everything that makes you happy," he said simply. The next morning they began. The work was hard, clearing rocks, turning the soil, breaking up the compacted earth. Dee's dock worker's muscles served him well, but he worked slowly, methodically, teaching Maya and Huyen as he went. He showed them how to test the soil, how to add organic matter, how to create drainage. Every action was deliberate, every step explained with patience. Huyền proved to be a quick learner and tireless worker. Despite her difficult past, or perhaps because of it, she threw herself into the labor with determination. She understood that every seed planted was a seed of independence. Every row prepared was a row away from the poverty and uncertainty that had haunted her. Maya, too young to do heavy work, became their assistant and cheerleader. She carried small tools, brought water in a tiny bucket, and asked endless questions. Why do plants need sun? Where do seeds come from? When will we see flowers? Dee answered each question with the same gentle patience, never too busy to teach. As the days passed, the land began to transform. What had been bare earth now showed the careful geometry of garden beds and pathways. Stakes marked where trees would go. String lines created perfect rows. The family worked in harmony. Dee's strength, Huyen's precision, and Maya's enthusiasm blending into something greater than the sum of its parts. In the evenings, they would sit at the edge of their plot, tired but content. watching the sun set over the mountains. The land was still mostly bare, but they could see it differently now. They could see what it was becoming. The planting began with ceremony and care. Day had ordered dragon fruit cuttings from a nursery 3 villages away, and when they arrived, he handled them like precious treasures. These weren't just plants, they were investments in their future. Dragon fruit commanded good prices at the market, but more importantly, they were beautiful. Their sculptural stems and night-blooming flowers would turn their garden into something magical. Day dug the first hole with precision, explaining to Huyen and Maya exactly why depth mattered, why spacing was crucial. Dragon fruit needs room to breathe and grow, he said, tamping soil around the cutting. Like us, like our family. He installed sturdy wooden posts for the plants to climb, creating a structure that would support them for years to come. Maya helped pour water around each newly planted cutting, her small hands careful not to spill. The pomelo trees came next. Day had chosen young but healthy specimens, their leaves already glossy with vigor. He planted them at the garden's corners, creating anchoring points for the entire design. "These will grow tall," he told Maya, lifting her up so she could help place the first tree in its hole. "One day, you'll climb them to pick fruit." Between the fruit trees, Day planted guava, papaya, and star fruit, a diverse orchard that would provide year-round harvest. Each tree received the same meticulous care: properly sized holes, enriched soil, careful watering. He worked as he always worked, thoroughly, patiently, getting it right the first time. While Day focused on the fruit trees, Huyen claimed her domain. She had divided her section into raised beds, the wood frames built by Ly Tu, her exact specifications. Now she filled them with the perfect soil mixture: earth, compost, and the rich organic matter that would make vegetables thrive. Her first plantings were practical: morning glory that would vine and spread, providing leaves for countless meals. Mustard greens that grew quickly and reliably. Herbs that would season their food and fill the air with fragrance. She worked methodically, creating rows with string guides, spacing each plant according to knowledge she'd learned from her own mother, back before everything fell apart. But Huyen didn't stop with vegetables. True to her vision, she interspersed marigolds throughout the beds, their golden flowers not just beautiful but beneficial, repelling pests that might harm the crops. Along the pathways, she planted cosmos seeds, imagining how their delicate pink and white blooms would dance in the breeze. At the bed edges, zinnias would eventually create borders of color. "Mama, it's so pretty!" Maya exclaimed, watching her mother work. Huyen paused, soil under her fingernails, a smudge of dirt on her cheek, and smiled. For so long, her life had been about mere survival. Now she was creating beauty. The difference felt almost miraculous. Maya's section, closest to the house where she could tend it easily, became a special project. Dee helped her choose plants that would be forgiving of a child's enthusiastic but sometimes erratic care. They planted cherry tomatoes that would produce abundant small fruits perfect for little hands. They added strawberry plants whose runners would spread and multiply. A small sunflower patch would tower over her eventually, creating a forest she could walk beneath. Day showed Maya how to make a small hole, how to nestle the plant inside, how to press the soil gently but firmly around the roots. "Talk to your plants," he advised seriously. "Tell them to grow strong. They'll listen to you." Maya took this advice literally, chattering to her seedlings as she watered them with her special small watering can. The work wasn't without challenges. Some days the highland sun beat down mercilessly, and they had to start early and rest during midday heat. Some plants didn't take, the soil or exposure not quite right, and had to be replaced. A sudden rainstorm once nearly washed away a newly planted section before Dee could build proper drainage. But they persisted. Every setback was met with problem solving, every difficulty overcome through combined effort. When Huyen struggled with a particularly stubborn root, Dae was there with his strength. When Dae couldn't decide on plant placement, Huyen's eye for aesthetics guided him. When either adult grew tired, Maya's infectious enthusiasm renewed their energy. Neighbors began to notice the transformation. Some offered advice, others offered cuttings from their own gardens. The garden became a neighborhood project in small ways, with contributions of seedlings and suggestions that Dae and Huyen graciously accepted. But the core of it, the vision and the labor, remained theirs. As weeks turned into months, the bare earth disappeared beneath green growth. The dragon fruit began climbing their posts. The pomelo trees established themselves, putting out new growth. Huyen's vegetables emerged in neat rows, and her flowers began to bud. Maya's plants thrived under her devoted, if sometimes excessive, attention. The garden was taking shape, and with it, so was their family. 3 months after that first morning, when Dae stood on bare earth, the transformation was complete, or rather, beautifully underway. For a garden is never truly finished. It lives, breathes, and evolves, just like the people who tend it. The dragon fruit vines had climbed halfway up their posts, their triangular stems reaching eagerly toward the sky. While they wouldn't flower for another season, their sculptural presence already added drama to the garden's backdrop. Dee checked them each morning, his practiced eye noting new growth, adjusting ties, ensuring each plant had what it needed to thrive. The pomelo trees had settled in beautifully, their branches spreading and leaves gleaming. The smaller fruit trees, guava, papaya, starfruit, were establishing root systems that would support abundant harvests in coming years. Already, a few ambitious blooms appeared on the papaya, promising fruit before year's end. But it was Huyen's section that truly dazzled. Her vegetables had responded to her careful tending with exuberant growth. Morning glory vines cascaded over their supports, providing armfuls of tender leaves for stir-fry. Mustard greens stood in robust rows, their leaves perfect for morning soup. Herbs released fragrance with every brush of a hand. The raised beds were a testament to what patience and care could achieve. And the flowers, oh, the flowers. Marigolds glowed like small suns throughout the garden. Cosmos had grown tall and airy, their delicate blooms swaying on thin stems, pink and white against the green. Zinnias created bold splashes of color, red, orange, yellow, attracting butterflies that danced from bloom to bloom. The garden wasn't just productive, it was beautiful. Maya's section had become her kingdom. She checked on her plants multiple times daily, reporting their progress to anyone who would listen. "My tomato has 6 flowers," she announced one morning. "The strawberries are getting bigger," she squealed another day. Her sunflowers had shot up with remarkable speed, now standing taller than Dee, their faces tracking the sun across the sky. The morning harvest became a cherished ritual. Dae would rise first, checking the garden in the soft dawn light, perhaps picking a ripe guava for breakfast. Then Huyen would join him, basket in hand, selecting vegetables for the day's meals. Maya would tumble out last, still sleepy but eager to see what new developments the night had brought. They'd walk the pathways together, Dee's hand on Huyen's waist, Maya skipping ahead. They'd pause at the dragon fruit to admire new growth, stop at the flowers to smell the zinnias, check the vegetables for readiness. The garden had become more than a source of food. It was their daily meditation, their connection to the land, their shared achievement. The lunches and dinners they prepared featured their own produce, and the pride they felt was immense. A stir-fry of morning glory, and herbs tasted sweeter knowing they'd planted the seeds. A salad of fresh greens seemed crisper when picked minutes before eating. even simple meals felt like celebrations. But beyond the practical benefits, the garden had given them something more profound. For Day, it represented the life he'd always wanted to build. Rooted, stable, growing. For Huyen, it symbolized transformation. She had been uprooted and cast out. But here she was, making things grow, creating abundance from earth and effort. For Maya, it was simply magic. The miracle of seeds becoming plants, of care becoming harvest. They would sit together in the early evening, after the day's heat had passed, watching the garden in golden light. Day might have his arm around Huyen. Maya might be sprawled in the grass, tired from a day of play and work. They didn't need to talk much. The garden spoke for them. It told a story of survival and hope, of a man who had been abandoned finding love again, of a woman who had lost everything building something new, of a child who should have had nothing growing up with everything that mattered. The garden was their proof that broken things could be mended, that empty places could be filled, that three people who had been lost could find each other and create something beautiful. It wasn't just plants growing in that highland soil. It was a family taking root, reaching toward the sun, blooming with possibility, from bare earth to living paradise. This is what love and labor can create. De Huyen and little Maya didn't just plant a garden. They cultivated hope, grew dreams, and harvested happiness from soil that once held nothing but potential. Their story reminds us that life's greatest treasures aren't found in wealth or status, but in the simple act of building something together. Every seed planted was a vote of confidence in their future. Every flower blooming was proof that beauty can emerge from hardship. Every vegetable harvested was evidence that care and persistence yield abundance. The garden stands now as more than just a collection of plants. It's a living testament to transformation, of land, of lives, of a family that chose each other and built something extraordinary from the ground up. Where there was once emptiness, now there is life. Where there was once uncertainty, now there is growth. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Life's Single Review. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to follow more of Day, Huyen, and Maya's beautiful journey. Their garden continues to grow, and so does their story. We'll see you in the next chapter of their lives. Until then, may you find your own garden to tend and your own dreams to cultivate.